What's going on, YouTube? Culturedog Sam Hatch back here with some more LaserDisc content. And we've been doing a lot of LD related videos lately, especially with the audio series. Decided to put it out. And that inspired me to do this as well. This is a topic that comes up all the time, especially within the LaserDisc collectors group circle, and particularly on Facebook's LaserDisc Forever group, which is, growing stronger every day. It's, about 10,000 members. So there are a lot of different people coming at this hobby from multiple different directions, and some people are just, super curious about it and don't actively collect it. But we do hear this topic being brought up a lot, and I had always meant to do a video about it in some fashion in the LaserDisc Essentials series, which, again, I mentioned in the audio series. It just requires a lot of work, and not that I don't like putting a lot of work into these videos, but I don't want the waters to grow stagnant. So I think it'd be fun to just do a total unscripted video like I did with the audio ones and just kind of sit down and chat about this stuff. And so, forgive me if some of the thought threads might meander a little bit, or maybe they kind of interweave strangely. But we're just going to sit and chat about this topic for a little bit. And it is, why bother? Why bother with LaserDisc? And why bother collecting it, and particularly watching it when there are, Blu-ray discs and, DVDs and UHDs, etc. Why bother with this old format? Which, again, always strikes me as a funny comment or question, because, as collectors, collectors in general collect all sorts of things that aren't deemed useful for modern living, but they're perfectly acceptable to collect. And I guess it's fitting, because LaserDisc always was a bit of a quirky, strange format. So I guess it just makes sense that it continues to be so in its dead format stages. And it always boggles my mind when people react, sometimes angrily, to people enjoying LaserDisc. And even when I've sat down at at my table at Retro World Expo, I've had people come up and say, "Whoa, I'm into retro, but not this. This is too retro even for me." So it's funny, yeah. The argument, which has some basis in logic, and is usually that LaserDisc was the best home video format of its time. It no longer is. So therefore, the only reason you collected in the first place was because of its high quality and its attention to detail and special features and all that stuff. Now that something else has supplanted it and is doing it better, it serves absolutely no purpose in our universe now. So you're done with it. And it's perfectly okay for you to collect other things that match that description, but not LaserDisc. So the argument is that it's a replication. For the most part, most of these are movies that were released in cinemas, so it is a way to watch 35mm films or what have you on home video, and it's an attempt to replicate that experience in the home environment. And VHS did it, albeit in terms of compromising shot compositions with pan and scan and all that. So LaserDisc upped the ante with letterboxing and things like that, though they had still plenty of pan and scan transfers as well, but better picture quality and everything. So it was the smart thing to do, was to get on board with LaserDisc, especially if you enjoyed film or were a film lover. And Roger Ebert and Martin Scorsese, they all had LaserDiscs, and Ebert had a pretty sizable LaserDisc collection. So it was the format for the cineast and the film lover. So it makes a certain amount of sense to say that, well, now that there's something else that can do a much better job at recreating that cinematic experience, why bother with LaserDisc? And again, being a replicated experience, it's held against LaserDisc, but for other medium, not so much. Like, there's all these other analogs. Like, it's totally okay to collect really, really crappy old Atari 2600 games or VCS games that are replicating poorly arcade cabinet games. That's okay. But LaserDisc is not okay. And a lot of the people that will give me crap about, collecting LaserDisc will, sew their tongues down the back of VHS's trousers all day long. So really, it's strange how it goes. And of course, there's people that collect old cars. It's always funny watching Top Gear or Grand Tour when they take a Ferrari from the 80s and then watch it get clobbered by a Ford from modern day. It's like these things haven't aged, their capabilities haven't aged along with them, but maybe there's something else. Maybe there's something more than the sum of their parts. So that's always the question here. Is LaserDisc, the format, more than the sum of its parts? And for some people like myself, the answer is yes. Usually what happens in these threads is, and sometimes they're worded tactfully, other times not, but it's usually a bit of a groaner because it's the justify your shitty taste thread. It's what you love sucks, why do you love it? And it is funny to see people get thrown for a loop, especially nowadays because it's an older format, and there are some people that are kind of coming at LaserDisc like it's VHS. There's the Domataris, they're like, it's so stupid, it sucks, it's awesome, that sort of thing. And they're completely bewildered by the fact that there are people that still celebrate it in a totally different way and actively watch it and enjoy it in a totally different way. So that just makes people's heads explode on the regular. So there's always a level of curiosity, especially with people kind of tripping across the community for the first time. And like, wait, this is a little bit different than other weirdos that collect old stupid things. What's the deal here? And yeah, a lot of times those threads turn into total shit shows because of the reactions to the having what you love put on trial and your reasons for doing it put on trial. And a lot of people don't take the bait, but then some people reflexively feel the need to justify their shitty tastes, and then out come all the justifications for collecting LaserDisc. And I don't know, a lot of it just feels like trying too hard. Like there's always they've got the proper color timing, and then the theatrical sound, and it's cool. There are some times when you can get a theatrical sound mix as opposed to like a near field mix or something like that on LaserDisc. But I don't know, having been there as an old timer when LD was a thing, I don't really see that much of a distinction between the quality of the content and how it was presented from LaserDisc to DVD to Blu-ray to UHD. Like the formats are different and have different capabilities. But in terms of transfers, good or bad, like there were both in each kind of generation of this media. There were great LaserDiscs, there were poor LaserDiscs, there were great DVDs, there were poor DVDs, etc. And nothing really seems to have changed. But there is this tendency to put on the rose-colored glasses and kind of make believe that there was this world, like there was this consortium of dudes in suits back in the day that were like, you know what, Jim, I think we should make sure that LaserDisc has nothing but the most accurate representation of theatrical color timing. And you're like, you know what, Bob, we should also make sure it's exactly the theatrical mix, because near field mixes suck, and LaserDisc is, we're going to put all our efforts into making sure it is 100% accurate. And then DVD came along and they're like, you know what, that was fun and all, but we should really make sure we do the opposite of that and screw things up as much as possible. Like I don't know, it's a little too simplistic of a way of looking at things. And for me, they all just kind of rolled together like one big wave. And granted, if LaserDisc hadn't died and was still around today, like all those orange and teal things people complain about would also be applied to LaserDisc. It's not on those discs from the 80s and 90s because people weren't doing it back then. So it's just a progression. And I can see people not enjoying older transfers because the art of, telecine, the art of transferring these films onto home video and the masters and everything, that also progressed. So if you're looking for anybody in the industry to understand your fervor for LaserDiscs, they're probably not going to, because they're just going to see this creaky old ship and they're like, well, we designed a much better ship, you should just ride in that thing and it's probably a little bit safer. And you're like, no man, there's some charm to this old baby. They're probably not going to feel that. And that goes for multiple medium, because I watched that documentary about the cassette tape, and how about now in the wake of Record Store Day, now there's Cassette Day. And the filmmakers traveled to visit one of the creators of the compact cassette at Philips. And he was just bewildered by the fact that anybody would still enjoy it now, because things came out that were better. CDs came out or whatever. And he wasn't nostalgic at all for the format. He was proud of the time he spent on it and the the friends he made while he was working on it, but he has like no intrinsic love for the format itself. So yeah, likewise, if you're looking for dudes that did transfers back in the 90s, they're just going to see old versions of their job and like primitive tools that they used to do their job. So they're not going to love it either. So yeah, maybe we're all wrong. Maybe this is a stupid format to collect. But yeah, so these people come out of the woodwork with their justifications for why they collect. And 9 times out of 10, like it applies very minimally in my case in terms of why I collect this format. There's always so there was the color timings are correct and the sound and everything like that. And that's cool and all, and I can appreciate it, but I rarely ever find myself watching, I don't know, any given film and go like, oh, did you catch that blue? That was a right shade of blue. High five, everybody. Or, like, oh my God, did you hear that bass rumble at 40 hertz behind us? Yeah, that's like turned down 12 dB, and the other mix is like, I don't know, that's just not how my brain is personally wired, so I don't celebrate those moments as I'm actively watching the film. It's cool to know, and it's cool to, I don't know, just really like, oh, that's a version with the correct sound, or that's a version with the 70 millimeter 6-track audio transferred over it. But that's about as far as it goes in terms of impacting my life and my collecting habits. So there's that. Then the next level is, well, there's this huge catalog of films that are available that aren't available on DVD and Blu-ray, etc. And that list is shrinking all the time. That argument is becoming less and less of a valid talking point as the years progress. And when I think about it, I've got like over 1,000 of these damn things. And the Keep? I've got the Keep that's not available on Blu-ray or DVD properly. It's bootlegged like hell. Dudes was one of them, but now Scream Factory put that out. Or Scout Factory. Shout Select. Cheers, guys. That seems like I guess that is a way to get into the format, but that's not why I collect it. Otherwise, I wouldn't have any of this stuff on here. I've got films in here that I own on multiple other formats, and we call it the Grand Slam if you have something on VHS, LaserDisc, and DVD, and Blu-ray, and 4K. Damn well I've got multiple copies of the Evil Dead series on other formats, and Big Trouble in Little China, etc. So that's certainly not it either. Then there's the argument for the artwork. Of course, that's pretty cool. 12-inch size jacket, much like vinyl. Then again, I store these things all vertically like this in cubes, so I just see the spines most of the time. I don't really frame them. I've got a couple frames, but I've got like records in those things, so I don't think I really have any displayed LDs and frames or anything like that. I mean, that said, the jackets are pretty badass looking, but that's not a reason enough to collect the format. There is a subset of major horror aficionados that are really into horror on LaserDisc, and I mentioned in previous videos, I've got one foot in that and 1 foot out of it. I personally enjoyed horror on home video a little bit more in the DVD age all the groundwork for that was laid at the latter end of LD's lifespan when Roan Group and Elite and a number of these small boutique companies were becoming what's really the norm nowadays with the Scream Factories and the Arrows and everything like that, and the Severins and all that stuff. Was kind of becoming a thing. The criterion of horror was starting to form in the latter years of LaserDisc, but it really kind of came to fruition. I mean, I just remember going to Media Play when DVD was a thing and just being agog at the amount of killer titles that were available for $25 on DVD. I could get Tombs of the Blind Dead or whatever, and I didn't have to pay $60 for it. So yeah, that's the other thing, and horror tends to be priced a little high, and I don't mind paying a premium for an Elite copy of something, but I'm not going to pay $60 for an old image dump of a VHS transfer of something, unless there's maybe it's like Return of the Living Dead or something like that, but there's got to be some sort of pull. So that's not really it either, and I'm not really like a full moon completist or anything like that, so that's not going on. But I do definitely understand if you're a conventioneer and you love getting autographs. I mean, if you're going to get somebody to sign something, like what better way to have that done with a 12-inch LaserDisc jacket? I've seen people with their Criterion Halloween jackets and the Elite Reanimator jackets signed, and that's how you do it. Nightmare on Elm Street with the Freddy sweater on there. That's a great one to get signed. So, but again, I don't really do that either, because I mean that's a pretty hefty investment in time and money in particular. And yeah, in my day, back in the day, it's like you just got an autograph from getting the ticket to the convention, and they just paid the personality. But now it's a whole different money making machine, and yeah, I haven't really gotten into that. So that's not it either. So there's all these different reasons of why, you know, and I've heard like it's more cinematic looking, it's more this, it's more, I don't know. And a lot of times it just feels kind of like grasping at straws. And it's like, if you're that desperate to justify your shitty tastes, like, I don't know, just kind of own it. And a lot of people have started doing that. They're like, you know, I love it because I love it. You know, if you have a problem with that, step. But yeah, I said before, like, there's that question of, is it more than the sum of its parts? And yes, for me it is. And I love a little bit of cognitive dissonance when it comes to collecting things. And I embrace that. It's never seen as anything detrimental. I just love the fact that I can agree with those people on the level that, yes, LaserDisc was, you know, at the top of its game. It was the primo format for delivering sound and picture quality. It has been outdone and outpaced by subsequent medium, which I just kind of view as like the children of LaserDisc anyways. And I can relate to all that. I can agree with that. But that still doesn't negate that I want to watch these things and continue collecting them. So usually the argument is, there was one guy recently that was like, why would you do that to yourself? Why would you, you know, suffer through watching these horrible films that, you know, do such a horrible job at replicating the original source material when there's something so far better? And, you know, that usually starts a war of words that goes on. But, you know, I never suffer. And they always say, you know, well, why don't you just collect Blu-ray? And especially in terms of pricing too, there's certain late release films that obviously you can get for like $2 on Blu-ray at Big Lots, but you know, you're going to pay $150 for a Japanese copy of something on LaserDisc. So, you know, there is some kind of inherent illogical behavior in collecting across the board, not just in LaserDisc. So, so there's that argument. But a lot of times, the people that are LD aficionados also do watch other formats. They watch, you know, VHD, they watch CED, they watch VHS, they watch Beta, they watch DVD, they watch Blu-ray, they watch 4K UHD. And yeah, I've got like right next to this camera, I've got a 4K television that I watch 4K discs on, and I watch LaserDiscs on. It's a thing. It's not a problem. And then I've got an old CRT TV in the other room, and I was just watching Blues Brothers, the Signature Collection, on my projector downstairs last night. And not only did I not feel that I was suffering, I was actively engaged the whole time, enthralled, and was just kind of buzzing about the experience this morning. So, no, there's no suffering going on, and you can actively enjoy this format. In my case, there's a couple things going on. One is, to somewhat paraphrase Samuel L. Jackson, I'm a time-traveling motherfucker. Because I was there during the kind of like 90s golden age of LaserDisc, I kind of planted the flag there, and I can always go back at any time. So, and funny, I actually remember there was a UConn professor that was talking about time travel, and he was saying that, you know, time travel into the future is impossible, but time travel into the past is theoretically impossible if there were some kind of marker there, something for you to focus on. And I forgot about the machinations of how it would all work, but that's how it works for me. I, you know, planted a flag at some point in the 90s, and I can go back there. So I have a switch, like in my brain, basically, that just goes bam, 1994 mode or whatever, and I can switch it back, so I can easily watch Alien on 4K on this thing and be excited about the sharpness, the clarity, and everything else. And then I can also that same night put on the old CAV misframed LaserDisc and or the 70mm 6-track surround AC3 digital version that came out a few years later on LaserDisc, and enjoy the hell out of that too. I've always viewed time strangely. I kind of think about the future and the past a little bit more maybe than a lot of my peers, so I am not bothered by being trapped in the now at all. And I'm always kind of bemused by the fact that people like to focus on things of the past being stupid or outdated now when they're not. I used to work with a girl that used to drive me crazy because she would always go through her, CDR spindles and mix discs. So again, I'm showing my age. It was mixtapes back in my day, but this woman would put together mixed CDs, and she'd always be like, "Oh, I can't believe I listened to this. Oh, I can't believe this song's so stupid. This song's so horrible." And I was always so annoyed because I'm like, if you are constantly ashamed of and dislike everything you were into about a year or two ago, just stop. Just stop listening to music, period. Because that implies that not only that, everything you listened to in the past, it just means that you were too stupid to realize that it sucked. And that's not how I live life and enjoying my media. Because that also implies that you're also too stupid to realize that the stuff you enjoy now also sucks. So it just imbues it with this horrible futility. Because I mentioned I often think about the future. So there's got to be some future version of, maybe streaming with high quality bandwidth or something. But there's some version of UHD that's better than UHD. So if you think LaserDisc is stupid, you also think UHD is stupid. And there's absolutely no point in you collecting it. And I always reject this concept that time has a way of destroying. I mean, the ravages of time will destroy maybe the physical components of something. But that's it. It has no effect on something that was great. It's all in comparison and contrasting, but that's just a mental construct. The thing itself hasn't changed. So what I loved about LaserDisc, and this was always my argument, is if LaserDisc was great in 1993 or 1994, if it was, it still is. Nothing about it has changed. I mean, unless the disc is oxidized and, the capacitors have gone bad on the player, etc., and the lasers failed, nothing about it has changed. It has moved through time untouched. It's presenting the same exact quality it delivered in 1994. And if you thought that it was good then, you have to accept that it's good now. And the comparison to today's medium, that's neither here nor there. It has no effect on it. UHDs don't get into a time machine and go back in time. Skynet doesn't send them back to 93 to destroy LaserDisc. They have no effect on it. It's all in your mind. So it's your problem, not my problem. Like I said, I've got a switch. I can just flick it and I'm back in 1993 mode. And then maybe that's not useful to people that weren't there and don't remember it. So, but I mean, sure, everybody has their own kind of way of time traveling and enjoying things of, of yore like that. So that's it. Yeah, LaserDisc will always, for me, be a very kind of modern and enjoyable thing because that's what it was. So I mentioned before I like collecting 90s discs because in some ways it's not just nostalgia, because I should equally be as nostalgic for VHS, because I mean I pretty much grew up in a video rental store because my biological dad was a manager of a local chain back in the day, and yeah, I mean I remember being 10 years old and recommending Apocalypse Now to people. So yeah, I was like baby Tarantino. That was my life. So I should be much more nostalgic for VHS than Laserdisc, even though I did watch Laserdisc Disco Vision back in the day when it was first dropped, and seeing Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band playing on the demo machine at the store. And then being super psyched to see Flash Gordon on Laserdisc, etc. So, but I don't really have that much nostalgic for that period of Laserdisc. My nostalgia is more tied in with the 90s era, the golden era. And part of that's probably because I really became solidified as a film enthusiast around that. I mean, I grew up always loving films, but it all kind of coalesced around the same time that I rediscovered Laserdisc and started actively collecting it and bought into it. So it was this kind of golden age for me. So yeah, there's a little bit of nostalgia there. But I'm also enjoying films that, one, I didn't see back then because I'm buying them now. So I'm enjoying the kind of time travel aspect of it because I can then go and get all these discs for next to nothing and then watch them. And for me, it's like when I watch something for the first time, like Virtuosity or something, I'm always like, oh man, I always meant to go see that in cinemas, and I never did. It just feels like I got back home from Suncoast or Saturday Matinee with a fresh LaserDisc, and I'm putting in, and I'm having almost the same reaction, the same experience as I would have back then. I'm not thinking, oh man, I wish I had this moment back in 1994. No, it's the same exact moment. Nothing's changed about it. It's all in your head and how you process things. Even just the other day, I was checking for Rot, and I popped in like Basketball Diaries on this 4K TV, and I was just like, I didn't want to stop it. I was just like, yes, I was just psyched. And there's just something about film from that period. There's just so many films that I haven't seen yet, so it's just a great, fun way to experience them. And there's something about scores for films. That was kind of the last gasp of big bombastic themes and real kind of like emotional scores before it kind of turned the page in the 2000s and became something else almost entirely. But then that said, it doesn't have to be 90s. Like I said, last night I watched Blues Brothers in a slightly tweaked Dolby Digital version and a slightly tweaked expanded edition on LaserDisc. And that was a later LaserDisc, but yeah, I enjoyed the hell out of that thing. So yeah, it wasn't because it was the theatrical version I remembered as a kid, because it wasn't, and it wasn't the sound mix I remembered as a kid. So it was its own thing, but I still, like I said, there was never a moment during that screening when I was like, I wish I could be watching this on Blu-ray. So yeah, LaserDisc for me is definitely more than the sum of its parts. So it's not just like, I like collecting old movies and anime looks good on it and black and white films look good on it. That all holds true. And it does hold true that the technology that was put into LaserDisc kind of kept on moving and evolved. But again, there's still going to be bad transfers on UHD, just like there were bad transfers on the LD. And again, if you think otherwise, do yourself a favor and start like looking on the old threads that Google has archived, the old message boards, and you'll see that people complained about just about every given LaserDisc and the transfers and everything about them just as much as everybody does on Blu-ray.com nowadays. You're kind of fooling yourself if you think otherwise. So yes, it was a golden age, but maybe not in terms of everything being 100% perfect. But I don't know, it's perfect for me. And yeah, there's something intangible. There's an essence to LaserDisc that is more than all of the arguments that you can put out there for collecting it. It's more than the jacket size. It's more than the letterboxing, and it's more than the theatrical sound mixes. And and on top of that, the fact that I can adjust my expectations and adjust my kind of temporal alignment. Man, I mean, I can throw on Reservoir Dogs right now and still be just as jazzed and kind of flash back to watching it in my pad, back in 1994 or whatever. So yeah, it is total time machine stuff. It's beyond nostalgia. It's awesome. It's LaserDisc. Why bother? Why not? Do it. Cheers, everybody.